Hello there and welcome to another episode of Coffee Break Blogging. Today we're going to be talking about blog post syndication, how to get your blog post out there and make as much headway as we can with them, get as much traffic as we can with them. Now, the first thing I want to answer here is just what the heck is syndication? So if you're not familiar with it, basically syndication means that we are getting our blog post to appear in other places around the internet. If your blog post is written and published to your blog and then no further action is done and that blog post just sits there on your blog and you wait around for people to show up, it will be like a little island unto yourself. Like nobody will know about you. Nobody will know about your new content. And you're not going to get much in the way of traffic. Okay. So syndication is getting it out there. It's getting it to appear on other sites and other publications. That's exactly what syndication is. Now, as we look forward into what we're doing here, I want you to keep two words in mind. The first one is the word leverage. And the second one is the word repurposing. So essentially what this means is that the word leverage means that we are getting as much result from minimal effort as possible. It's the idea that we create something once and we're going to get as much use out of that thing as we possibly can. Now, very, very closely related to that is the idea of repurposing. Repurposing is where we take a piece of content and we put it into other formats that will then allow us to reuse it and get more leverage out of it. So many of the strategies that we're going to be talking about here are doing exactly this. It's ways to take our blog content and kick it out there in other places, sometimes by changing the format. Okay? Now, so the first thing that I want to let you know about in terms of syndication is simply social media. Now, I'm not going to repeat myself on this because the episode right previous to this, episode 90, went all into how to get your blog post out there on social media. So instead of me repeating myself, head on back to episode 90. It's the episode right before this one. And we're going to deep dive on how to get your blog post out there on social media after you hit the publish button. So that is one very simple way of syndication. Usually it's the easiest one, so therefore it's the one that pretty much everybody does. But you do need to make sure you get it done right, and that's what episode 90 is all about. Now, moving on to the next syndication strategy or tactic would be simply social bookmarking. Now, social bookmarking, I don't want you to think that this is going to be some kind of a holy grail of traffic. It's absolutely not. And in fact, many times you're going to social bookmark stuff and the effect will be barely noticeable. That's just kind of the way it is. Now, I used to have a strategy in place for social bookmarking because I thought maybe it was actually resulting in something. At the end of the day, it wasn't doing much for me. What I found for me was that, it would get it out there in front of a few people's eyes, on some of the aggregation sites that take content in. But the biggest traffic generator for me was StumbleUpon. So that's stumbleupon.com. And now that's a big link discovery social network where people are stumbling around, and randomly hitting sites and they can upvote it. So essentially that helps spread it around. And you can get massive, massive traffic spikes out of StumbleUpon, and I have multiple times. The problem with StumbleUpon traffic is that they bounce off like nobody's business. It's very low quality traffic. They're not targeted leads by any stretch of the imagination in most cases. So you can get a nice big traffic spike and it makes you look feel all good about yourself, but you're going to have an insanely high bounce rate. And it's because they're not really often the right type of people. They're just in internet surfing mode. They're not looking for anything. But at the end of the day, it is a way to, it's one other little tactic you can throw in your arsenal and see what happens is using some social bookmarking. And there's some tools out there that you can use. One of them is called onlywire.com that you can use to get some of the social bookmarking done for you automatically, or at least make it a lot simpler. Okay, moving on to number 3 here, our third tactic that I want to mention is video. So this goes into the area of repurposing. You can actually take a blog post, especially one that you see has been performing fairly well written, and you can repurpose it into a video. Now, how could you do that? You could, get on camera and just talk about the topic of that blog post. I don't think I would read it because you're going to look like a robot if you do that. But just take the topic of the blog post and just talk about it. Just have a conversation with the person on the other end of that camera lens and just talk about it. Now, another way that you could do it is to turn it into a slide presentation. So therefore, you don't have to be on camera. It would be slides, and then you're just speaking to it. So that's another way of repurposing. Now, another example of repurposing. Now, we don't do a real fancy production job on this by any means, but this particular podcast is repurposed to YouTube. We actually take the audio, we put the feature image for the podcast, we splice it together into a video, and we share every episode of this podcast to the YouTube channel. Now, it doesn't get nearly as much activity over there as it does in iTunes, and I wouldn't expect it to, but it is another means of distribution, another means of syndicating this content out into other places, but because we put it into video format and allow us to get it up on YouTube. So you could do this. You can look into content that would be worth changing the format up and getting a video to go along with it and getting it up into the major video sites. And YouTube obviously is the biggest one. The fourth one I want to mention is podcasting. That's what you're listening to right now. Now, podcasting is a really great medium. It has very high engagement because you're literally, as I am right now with you, I am burrowed into your eardrums, most likely, or I'm coming out your car speakers. One way or the other, you're listening to me right now. And that is a level of engagement between you and I that I'd have a hard time getting if you were reading something that I wrote. Okay, so podcasting is really good. And it also, unlike video, you don't need to be watching something. Podcasting is one of those forms of content that's very easy to go through while you're doing something else, like exercising or driving or riding your bike or something to that effect. And so podcasting is a really great form of content. Now, you don't have to create all original content for a podcast, nor do you need to depend on interviews like you see so many people do. You can actually take stuff that you've already written about and repurpose it into audio form. Very much like you would do with a video. You can simply talk about the same topic. It does not have to be reading the blog post. Now, unlike video, you could, with a podcast, probably get away with just reading your blog post. Okay, you could probably get away with it. Now, I would encourage you to do some practice so that when people listen to you, you don't sound like you're reading it. You want to sound conversational, sound, natural. So you don't want to sound like you're just reading a piece of text like this. You don't want to do that. So if you're going to read your blog post, get some practice under your belt so you can read it back in a natural way. And then, you could just straight up read a blog post and turn it into an audio version of your blog. I've seen several people out there do that, and it is a way of getting a podcast out there without feeling like you have this whole second thing you got to deal with, okay? The fifth little syndication tactic here would be that you could turn your blog post into a PDF. And you could post it out there on sites like scribed.com, where that is basically a site full of nothing but PDF documents, ebooks essentially. So you could take your content and do it that way. Now, will a single blog post be enough to justify a PDF? That'd be your call. But some people might find it interesting because Scribed is an alternative. It is a PDF focused method of getting content out there. The other thing you could do is offer PDFs of your blog post to readers of your blog, because some people will find that it's more portable, more easily referenced if they can take it off your blog and get it into a PDF format. Maybe they'll drop it into Evernote or something and come back and reference it later. So you could either give those PDFs to them for free, or this could be the easiest way of doing what's called content upgrades to build your list. Literally just have them opt into your list to get a PDF version of the blog post that they just read, okay? Easiest way to go. I'm not saying your conversion rate is going to be through the roof on that, but you're going to pick up some email subscribers that you otherwise would not have, so why the hell not, right? But that is a way of repurposing a blog post and getting more leverage out of it, okay? Another strategy, number 6 on my list here, is to turn that blog post into a slideshow, okay? Now, this is not going to be a word-for-word thing where you copy and paste your blog post into a slide. That would be stupid. What you're going to want to do is boil it down into some key points, some bullet points, and put those on the slides. And then that is useful, okay? Now, what you can do is turn around and put that slideshow on a site like SlideShare. SlideShare, I believe it's a .net domain. slideshare.net, and you can get some further distribution there, okay? Now, don't expect magic from there. The best performing slide shows on SlideShare are the ones that are going to be very, very well done. So if the more work you put into this, and like any form of content, you do a little bit of promotion behind it, you can get some real legs going on SlideShare, maybe get featured there. But otherwise, it's just a way of syndicating your content out to an additional platform. Now, I did mention earlier when we were talking about the video that you can take that same slideshow that you would put out on SlideShare, and you can record yourself giving a small, short presentation and screencast the entire thing, record it, and put that up on YouTube. So you see how you're getting multiple usages out of the same thing. Number 7 on my tactic list is a site called ZinePal. That's Z-I-N-E and then pal.com. So ZinePal. So what this site will do is that it takes the RSS feed of your blog and will turn it into a PDF ebook. Okay? And you can control the formatting of that within some limitations. You're not going to have, it's not like a desktop publishing app here, but with some limitations, you can put, your own header and stuff onto the document and you get yourself a PDF. So that is a way of repurposing stuff. But the other cool thing that ZinePal has the ability to do is repurpose this same document into the Kindle. So it allows you to actually publish your blog content onto Kindle ebook, and people can actually read your blog on their Kindles. Interesting way of doing some syndication here, all right? So I would encourage you to check out zinepal.com, okay? Lastly, I want to talk about a few ways that you can repurpose this stuff further. One of them would be that you can actually take some of your existing content and repurpose it, rewrite it into a guest post. So guest posting is a traffic strategy, as we've talked about in past episodes. Depending on how you do it and who you're guest posting for, it can have limited workability, but it does work. It is a legitimate traffic generation tactic. Now, instead of writing, a completely new piece or going through all this work to find out something you've never written about before, you can actually go to your own blog archives and use your existing content as a starter for a guest post. So I'm definitely not saying that you republish an entire blog post someplace else. I don't do that. What you would do is you would use your blog post and rewrite it, make a new piece of content out of it, but on the same topic. You can expound upon it a little bit, and then you've got yourself a guest post that you can submit to another site. What this is going to do is save you some work. It's going to save you some needless brain spinning because you've already actually done a lot of the work by writing the first version. Now you're just going to repurpose it into a second version. Okay. Another thing that you can do is take a blog post or a series of blog posts, or maybe take a blog post as an idea and do this, and that is turn it into a lead magnet. You can actually go into your blog post and take sections of it or the whole thing, or maybe repurpose it into something that's more lead magnet worthy. But essentially, you can find ways to build your email list in stuff you've already written. Again, that's a way of getting more leverage by repurposing your content. Now, another way, and we've already talked about this, but this is a different way of doing it, and that is turning this into a Kindle book, a Kindle ebook. Now, ZinePal, like I mentioned earlier, is a way to do this based on your RSS feed, but you can also create a much more better structure, basically a real book, out of content that you've already written on your blog. Now, you're going to have to do some work to put this content into the right order, into an order that flows like a book should. You're probably going to have to rewrite a few things so that it actually flows well when somebody's reading it in that format rather than the blog post by blog post format. But you can do that, and you can come up with a Kindle book that you can distribute. And at the very least, that's just an additional platform out there on Amazon, which is not a bad place to be. And you can get some leads into your site that way. The last one I'm going to mention is that you can repurpose content that you've already written into email autoresponders. So you can actually, if you're looking for ways to put useful content into your email autoresponder sequences, you can go back into the archives of your own blog and take content you've already written, and you can use that as material to email out to new subscribers on an automatic basis. And you can either copy and paste the thing in there, maybe tweak it up a little bit, or you can tease the crap out of it in that email and then lead them right to your blog, which would probably be a better strategy, actually. But this is a way to get some additional use out of content that's probably sitting back in the archives now. Okay, so all these ways are ways where you can do two things. Increase your leverage from your content by doing the second thing, which is repurposing stuff. Get it out there in multiple formats in order to get more leverage, to get more use out of it. A blog post, when you do it right, and if you're in a good market, it should be the kind of thing that it acts as an asset moving forward. It should not be something to where you write it and it sits on the homepage of your blog for a week or so, then it kind of goes into the archives and dies. That's a hamster wheel. That's a content hamster wheel, and that's no way to live, okay? We need to be thinking in terms of long-term asset and getting as much use as possible from every piece of content that we create. We don't want to be operating in first gear and having to sweat and type our, hands off here to get anywhere. That's not the way this stuff works, okay? We need to be thinking in terms of maximum use out of the stuff that we make. Okay, so that is our syndication strategy. Now, in order to take this up to the next level, as well as get the specific how-to on how to put all this stuff together, in the last episode, I mentioned my traffic action plan that you can grab. Now, one way to grab this is as a Blog Monetization Lab member, and that's at blogmonetizationlab.com. Now, there is another little way to get this, and I'm just going to tell you about it here on the podcast, is that if you go to the Blog Marketing Academy, that's at blogmarketingacademy.com, go to any of my blog posts, and in the sidebar, you will see one of my lead magnets, which is the pre-published checklist. It's a checklist that you can run your blog posts through before you actually publish them, to make sure that post is set up in the best possible way to get as much traffic as you can once you release it into the world. Now, once you opt in for that checklist, I am going to extend to you a front-end offer. We've talked about front-end offers on this podcast before, but the front-end offer will be my traffic and syndication action plan, and you can get it for as low as $7. And that's a special offer only for brand new subscribers of the list who come in through that particular lead magnet. The only other way to get that action plan would be to become a full lab member at blogmonetizationlab.com, okay? So with that being said, we will leave it at that. This episode is almost 20 minutes long, which is a little long for a coffee break. So we'll leave it at that, okay? I'll see you next time.